meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the Speed Meter Steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. Let me make some statements. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Samuel Morse invented the telegraph. Al Gore invented the internet. All of these statements are not true. Edison did not invent the light bulb. Rather, he made improvements to existing light bulb technology. Morse did invent the codes of dots and dashes, but the telegraph equipment itself was invented by Joseph Henry. And Al Gore, well, he's Al Gore, so no need to explain beyond that. And if you ask the typical American on the street about Henry Ford, you will likely hear one, some, or all of the following. Henry Ford invented the automobile. He was the first make of car in the United States. He was the first to mass-produce cars. He invented the assembly line. All of these are, of course, not true. What did he actually do? Why is he so significant in the American automotive history? Who really was this young man that would become the world-famous Henry Ford? Henry was born in the small Michigan town of Springwells Township in 1863, the oldest of 6 children. His father, William Ford, was a local farmer, a profession that young Henry had no interest in pursuing. As a young child, Henry put together a small machine shop in a shed on the farm and began to tinker. At the ripe old age of 12, his father gave him a used pocket watch, which, like many other future engineers, he took apart and back together several times, learning about how it worked. His mother died when he was 13, and this event led him to pursue engineering as his lifelong career. Over the next couple of years, he gained a reputation as a local watch repairman and as a tinkerer. He built a steam engine of his own by the time he was 15. However, he wasn't particularly fond of the engine as he felt that the boiler was too dangerous. There were not too many opportunities on the farm for young Henry to build an engineering career, so he headed to the big city to find his fortune. Arriving in Detroit in 1879, he found work as an apprentice machinist in the shop of James F. Flower & Brothers, and later at the Detroit Dry Dock Company, where he completed his apprenticeship in 1882. Certificates in hand, he took a job at Westinghouse as a mechanic, maintaining and repairing large industrial steam engines, a job he excelled in, and within a few years was the chief engineer and mechanic. He left Westinghouse in 1891 to become an engineer of a new Detroit concern, the Edison Illuminating Company. He and his new boss, a certain Thomas Alva Edison, found themselves to be cut from the same cloth, both being excitable tinkerers, and struck up a lifelong friendship. Ford proved his worth and within 2 years was the chief engineer at the company. Armed with a decent income at a company with lots of new technology around, Ford began to tinker in earnest. In 1893, he built his first gas engine, a small single-cylinder one-stroke engine similar to the Lenoir engine of 1863. It was not a very powerful machine, but it did run, coming to life while bolted to his kitchen table. I'm sure that his wife, Clara, was thrilled to have a noisy, smoking, and greasy engine running next to her while she was trying to do things like make dinner. He made a bigger 2-cylinder engine of the same kind with the intent of making a car. He was particularly encouraged by both his employer, Thomas Edison, and also by the example of Charles Brady King, whose car was on the roads of Detroit in the early spring of 1896. Ford, like many others of early carmen, turned to bicycle technology to wrap around his engine, building his quadricycle in the fall of 1896. Like most cycle cars of the day, it was light, spindly, and fairly fragile. It could reach 15 miles an hour with a good tailwind and Ford himself driving. Anyone heavier would slow the car down too much. Henry began to address this issue by building new and more modern engine designs to get more power. Thomas Edison was quite keen on Ford's car, but Edison also knew that the two of them were too much alike to work together much longer. And also, the Selden patent was in force, and Edison wasn't interested in developing things he couldn't own. So, Edison sat Henry down one day and told him, "You have it, keep at it." And with Thomas's blessing, Ford left the Edison Company to found the Detroit Motor Company in 1899. Within 18 months, Ford's new company was bankrupt. At the time, Henry wanted his cars to stand out, and racing was the way to do it in his mind. He designed faster and faster cars and did defeat his biggest rival, the Winton, in a race held at Grosse Pointe, Michigan in 1901. However, race cars and racing of the day wasn't the safest thing, and his cars did not sell well. The investors pulled out and the company was done. About a month later, he found some new money and restarted the Detroit Motor Company, renaming it the Henry Ford Company. This lasted less than 6 months. The overall problem was still there. Race cars don't sell well to the general public. True, Henry was working on the idea of a more simple car that would be easy to manufacture, but the technology as well as resources available to him were not yet in place. This company also went into receivership and was eventually taken over by Henry Leland, who would use the skeletal remains of both the Detroit Motor Company and this attempted rebirth of it to establish Cadillac. It was on June 16th, 1903, that Henry Ford, along with 12 friends that helped put up the money, created the Ford Motor Company that we all know today. Third time's a charm, eh? And the exploits of Mr. Ford and his company are the stuff of legend, which we'll be talking about in the future. Ford's vision of what a car could be socially and his determination to make it happen revolutionized the modern world. And although he was not the inventor of the car, he was perhaps the single most important innovator of automotive manufacturing. His vision of making a car for the masses was realized to such an extent that by 1915, over 1/3 of all cars on the roads of planet Earth were in fact Fords. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.